June 26th marks the International Day in support of victims of torture. To commemorate the occasion, peaceful anti-torture rallies were held in Bern, Switzerland and Vienna, Austria, calling on the international community to pay attention to allegations of torture and human rights abuses against religious believers in China. Large banners themed Prohibition of Torture were displayed at both events, introducing the principles of the United Nations Convention Against Torture. Exhibits presented information compiled from survivors' testimonies, human rights reports, and publicly available sources, outlining various alleged methods of torture, along with reconstructed illustrations based on witness accounts. The exhibition presented methods of abuse, including electric shocks, suspension while handcuffed, handcuffing behind the back, severe beatings, exposure to extreme cold, burns from lit cigarette butts, stress positions, sleep deprivation, forced ingestion of irritating liquids, involuntary injections of psychiatric drugs, forced blood collection, and other invasive medical procedures. The displays also explain the lasting physical injuries, psychological trauma, and emotional harm these practices can inflict.
Dass man in China gefoltert wird, weil man an Gott glaubt. Und so viele verschiedene Glaubensgemeinschaften werden verfolgt. Und mit so unglaublich menschenunwürdigen Sachen werden sie gefoltert. Das ist.
On June 26th at 11 a.m., the Swiss rally was held at the plaza outside Bern railway station, where more than 20 Christians from the Church of Almighty God joined the others. Local Christian Heinz Oberli attended the event in support and delivered remarks. The rally lasted until 1 p.m. and drew the attention of many passers-by. On the morning of June 27th, a similar event took place in Stephanplatz in front of St. Stephen's Cathedral in central Vienna. Participants introduced the international prohibition against torture through a peaceful gathering, informational presentations, and photo displays, while calling on the international community to pay closer attention to the worsening human rights situation affecting religious believers in China, and to oppose religious persecution and torture. Many passers-by stopped to examine the banners and display boards, read the information, and spoke with participants. Some also agreed to interviews, sharing their views on freedom of religion, human rights protections, and opposition to torture.
Assault these people. This is not normal. It's really not normal.
Yes.
For this century, we have all rights.
Sophia, a Ukrainian resident living in Switzerland, said after viewing the exhibition that violence and torture of this kind are unacceptable. She stated that everyone should be protected under the law and that such abuses should not occur without due legal process and judicial safeguards. During the event, representatives of the participating Christians delivered speeches addressing opposition to torture, the Chinese Communist Party's persecution of religious believers in China, as well as torture and other human rights abuses against members of the Church of Almighty God and other religious communities. Speakers said that the International Day in support of victims of torture serves not only as a day to remember torture victims, but also as an opportunity for the international community to reaffirm its commitment to opposing torture and protecting human dignity and fundamental rights. Referring to the principles of the United Nations Convention Against Torture, they emphasized that no state, institution, or circumstance can justify the use of torture. They also called on the international community to continue monitoring serious human rights violations around the world, particularly those that continue to occur in China against Christians. Addressing the broader situation of religious freedom in China, speakers argued that under the long-term one-party rule of the Chinese Communist Party, religious communities have faced sustained suppression. They said that house church Christians, underground Catholics, Uyghur Muslims, Tibetan Buddhists, and members of the Church of Almighty God have all experienced varying degrees of repression, with members of the Church of Almighty God being among those most severely persecuted. Several speakers also cited reports from human rights organizations international religious freedom monitoring groups, and publicly available reports published by the Church of Almighty God. They stated that large numbers of church members have been subjected to surveillance, arrest, detention, forced ideological transformation abuse, and torture because of remaining steadfast in their faith. As a result, some Christians have suffered serious physical and psychological harm, and some have even lost their lives. In 2025 alone, at least 8,996 members of the Church of Almighty God were subjected to torture, abuse, or coercive brainwashing, and at least 23 died as a result of persecution. According to incomplete statistics, at least 318 members of the church died as a result of persecution between the church's establishment in 1991 and the end of December 2025, while at least 84,077 members were subjected to torture or forced ideological transformation between 2011 and 2025, describing these figures as evidence of serious violations of religious freedom and fundamental human rights. Heinz Oberli, a Swiss Christian, said in an interview,
Ich denke, wir sollten alle aufstehen, wie ihr es hier macht, und uns melden. Nur wenn wir aufstehen und es ausdrücken, können Veränderungen erfolgen. Und ich finde das ganz wichtig, diese Demos, die heute hier stattfinden, und bin auch sehr gerne dabei, damit wir Europäer erfahren, dass in China so große Verfolgung herrscht, nur für den Glauben an den Allmächtigen.
At the conclusion of the events, participants once again called on the international community, national governments, and human rights organizations to continue paying attention to allegations of torture and serious human rights abuses against religious believers in China. They urged united opposition to all forms of torture and called for an end to what they described as the Chinese Communist Party's ongoing violations of religious freedom and human rights, expressing hope that freedom of religion and other fundamental rights would receive greater protection.